Hi everyone, Savannah here, and in today's sketch we're drawing a wise owl perched on a branch with a glowing lantern lighting up the night. I'm using my free custom brush set, which you can find a link in the description down below, as well as the sketch template and color palette that I used in this video. Let's go ahead and jump in. First thing we're doing is changing that background, so go into layers, click background color, and scroll up until you find the owl color palette in the palette section. We're going to do this really dark blue color for this background here. Then go ahead and add a new layer, bring it down below the outline layer that I provided, and grab this light orangish tan color. Make sure you select that circle brush in your brushes, and then we're going to trace and fill in the owl here. And we are going to layer on colors here. So we're just starting with this lighter color. It's not going to be this light for the entire owl. We will add some highlights, we'll add some shadows as well. But for now, we're just doing the one color just to get the general shape filled in first and foremost. And then we'll add in the details. So doing just the main outline. I'm not doing the claw here that's holding the lantern. I'm mainly just doing the body, and I'm not also doing the feet. I'm just doing the body for this section. And then to fill this area faster, you can make the brush size a little bit bigger. I tend to keep it a little bit smaller around the edges just so I'm not going outside of the shape that I have here. But once I kind of get that general outside thicker, then I can make that brush a little bit larger. It just depends on the shape of the object that you're filling in. If it's a pretty big object, you'll want a bigger brush size. If it's small enough, you could just stick with the brush size that you had selected, but I kind of alternate depending on the object. And now that that's complete, let's go ahead and add a new layer. I'm actually going to set this to the clippy mask. We're going to do the face of the owl here, and we're going to grab this kind of grayish, tannish color, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to trace around the face of the owl here, and then we're going to fill it in. This, we did it as a clippy mask because that way when you are adding in the colors here, it's on its own layer, but it's confined to the shape of the owl that we did below it. And so this works really well when you have multiple details on a particular object, where if you get further along in the project and you don't like what you like on that particular layer, it's very easy to erase parts or delete parts without affecting that bottom layer. So that's why we did a clipping mask here instead of doing it directly on the owl. Now we're going to add in the eyes and the beak. We're actually going to do this on a new layer. So grab the new layer, grab that dark, it's called grayish magenta, but it's almost black color. And then we're going to circle and fill in the eyes here. I did do these on a new layer because they don't need to be a clippy mask to the layer below, since it's well within the size here, or the shape here. And also we're going to add feathery details to the face and the body. And so if you add those eyes now, you won't be able to add all those details right up to where the eyes are. Now I did swipe over and duplicate this layer for the eyes, and then I'm just kind of rotating it. So you just swipe on the layer you want to duplicate, select that duplicate button, and then you hit that arrow that is blue, select up in that top left to change the size of the eye. So I changed it a little bit because I didn't want them to be symmetrical exactly, because his face is kind of going away on that right side from us, and so that's why I did the duplicate and then tweak the size of it. And then I just merged that layer down. So you just click that layer and select merge down. I like to keep minimal layers here because I am limited with the size canvas that I have, or that I'm using here. You are only confined to a certain amount, so I usually keep a lot of details on the same layer. Now we're just going to do the beak. We're using that same color we used for the eyes to fill in the shape, outline, and the shape of this beak. Now that we have the general outlines and colors filled in, we're going to start adding details. So we're going to work on the body layer first. I grabbed the dark red orange here, but I'm actually going to switch it here in a second to that darker black color, and we're using that circle blend brush. So I'm going to be adding in the dark black color where that wing is to kind of give it some definition. We'll blend it out. It's not going to be black exactly, but we are going to add some definition. Now, I noticed that I did not turn this layer on alpha lock, so make sure you do that. We do alpha lock so that when you're adding in color into the image here, it stays confined to the shape that you're coloring in. As you saw before, it went outside of the shape that I want it to go outside of. So if we want alpha lock with, we want to put the color within that shape. I'm going to add some dark color down along the bottom here and off to the left here because the lantern is going to give it a glow from the right side. So I want everything on the left to be a little bit darker. And again, I'm just using that circle blend brush. I'm just adding some strokes here. I will lighten this up a little bit with some of this brown color. So I'm going to grab that dark red color and go over some of this black here. I don't want it to be completely black. I want this owl to be more of a brown color, but I do want some of that dark black color for the shadows. So we're just kind of doing these little strokes here. You don't have to press too hard if you don't want to. I press hard in some areas, lighter in other areas. It just depends on how much of that color you want to pull through. These are, well, this circle blend brush is pressure sensitive, so kind of play around with the pressure that you put with it to get the overall effect that you're looking for. But I'm just kind of doing these short little lines here to mimic kind of that owl fur. And I'm just going to keep going up with this brown. I'm going to pull in some of the darker up a little bit more. I went a little too light in some of these areas. So again, just kind of keep tweaking with these colors. If you want to go lighter, you absolutely can. I want to go a little bit darker here. So that's why I'm adding some more darkness. But it's really up to you. This is your interpretation of this image that we're working on. And so use whichever colors. You can even do it completely different color owl if you wanted to. Something more mythical. You could do a purple owl if you wanted to. But I'm just kind of adding in a little bit darker here, again, using that same kind of brush stroke, those short little strokes here to kind of overlay. And I do want to make sure that there's enough darkness so along the edge here of the wing to show that there is a wing there. It's not just all part of that same body. So just want to make sure that we add a little bit of darkness there. And now we're going to pick up some other colors here. So I'm going to grab that lighter brown color and start again with that technique. I'm kind of going around the shape of the owl's body here, kind of following where the fur would kind of go on, like this arm here would be kind of going out towards where it's holding the lantern. The chest would be kind of going downward. So just kind of make sure you're following the shape of the owl here when you're adding in these colors. And just keep building upon this. So I'm using this brown here. I'm going to blend it in with the colors that we already have. I'll pull in some more of this lighter color, but I'm just really working on these short little lines, blending it out. You could pull those colors in from between. As you can see, it's kind of creating these a little bit of in-between colors between the color that is that you're using and the color that's already on the screen. And so you can grab colors in between, you could stick to the color palette, you can grab completely different colors outside the color palette, but I'm just kind of following the curvature of the owl here. So around the head here, kind of going up for those parts at the top and then bring it around the head here and down into the wings. So just kind of, again, make sure you're following the curvature of the owl. And you can also play around with the size of the brush here. You don't have to go as small, so I'll mess around with it a little bit to see what size I want to do, if I want to go a little bit bigger or smaller. So again, play around with it, figure out what size you want to do, but we're just going to keep working on these short little markings here, blending it out as we go from that lighter to darker color. And I will lighten that chest up a little bit, but again, we're building on this layer here, so I want to add in a lot of the in-between and darker colors before we go kind of adding in that highlight. The right side again of the owl is going to be much lighter, so I'm going to kind of keep that light as much as possible. This left side though is where it's going to be more in the shadow, so I want to make sure that I'm darkening that up enough to give it enough contrast between the two sides. And then darkening a little bit underneath of where that face fur is. You don't have to go too crazy with that, but there's going to be a little bit of darkness there. And then where this wing is, right kind of where it's kind of tucked in there, we'll add a little bit of darkness. Again, don't want to go too heavy because there's going to be light there, but we do want to add a little bit to give it some more definition, some more character. And then we can add in more lightness here. So that's what I'm doing. I grabbed that lighter color and I'm just kind of blending it out with what we just added here with those midtones. You can add in a little bit of yellow here because again, with the lantern, it's going to give that glow, a yellow bit of glow here. So grab that yellow, blend it in a little bit here, especially on the edges here where it's going to be holding that lantern on the right side of the face here and the chest there. And if you went too far with the yellow like I did, you could still pull in that kind of tannish brown color and just kind of soften it up a little bit. So a lot of this is just building up layer by layer, adding in different colors until it's kind of blended how you want it to look. And then same thing for the face. We're going to work on that next. I'm going to grab this slightly different, a little bit more yellow color and make sure again you have that layer set to alpha lock. But I'm going to grab this a little bit more yellowy color and put it to the right side of the face because again that light's hitting that right side of the face. And then the left side I'm adding a little bit more brown because it's going to be more in the shadow area. So wanted to kind of darken the one side up, lighten the other side up, and then we can add that same kind of texture to the face here with the kind of hair brush marks that we were working on. You don't have to go too crazy here. This is more, kind of a smaller section, so you can do a little bit here. You don't have to go too crazy. I didn't do too many brush strokes here. I'm just kind of blending it out. And then I am going to grab a little bit more of a white color and add some lighter white towards the bottom just to give it more definition, not necessarily because of the glow, but because I want to give this a little bit more character to the owl. I wanted a little bit more of this lighter kind of hairs on the surface of the face here just to give it distinction from the body so it's not kind of blending in. And then with the body, I'm just going to add a few pieces here and there to blend it in with that head to make it look like this is still part of that same owl. And still just using those light brush strokes here with that circle blend brush. Now just going back to the face, I'm just add a few more details here. I'm grabbing that lighter brown color and just kind of doing these brush marks that are up and down just to give it a little bit of character, a little bit of definition, a little bit of texture. This also helps blend that white out a little bit so it's not so stark. I don't want it to be just these random white lines. I want it to look a little bit more natural. So that's what I'm kind of doing here is blending in those white lines a little bit more. And then I'm going to grab that dark reddish color and I'm going to add some detail around the eyes here. So bring that brush size down. I'm still using that circle blend brush because again, it's pressure sensitive. So I'm just very lightly adding in some definition here, just kind of around the eyes to give it a little bit more of definition to make them pop out a little bit. And I am doing a little darker on the left side because that is in the shadow. So I'm going to grab that brown color and use that for the coloring around the eyes on the right, just because, again, that's more hit in the light. And so we don't want it to be the same exact color that it is on the left side. Then we're going to grab this white and we're going to just add some reflective light into the eyes here of the owl. And also we're going to add some of that to the beak here because there's going to be a little bit of that reflectiveness. Use the white first, and then I'm using this brown to kind of blend it a little bit more into the nose here or into the fur. I'm using that at the tip there. So not going too heavy-handed with the white on that nose. I'm just adding a little bit of that glow. And now we're going to work on the lantern and the hand in this area. So we're going to grab that very dark black magenta color. On a new layer, grab that circle brush, and we're just going to fill in the shape of the lantern here. And I am just filling it all in one color. You can do different colors or different layers if you want to, but I will add in details with lighting techniques and shadows and things like that. And so I'm not worried too much about separating these out. I am going to separate that middle part where that light is going to be. So it's only where the kind of these darker black areas are going to be. I'm filling those colors in, and then we'll add a separate layer for that light. But for this, we don't have to do different layers, or we don't have to do different colors. We're just going to do it all in one color, and then I'll show you how I do the technique for highlights and shadows and things like that. And then once we fill this in, we will make sure that we alpha lock this layer. Again, we want to add details to the layer. We don't want to go outside of the shape that we just spent all this time outlining and filling in. So make sure you alpha lock that layer when you're ready to add details. And then for the lantern, on a new layer below the black lantern layer, we're going to use orange, and we're going to use that as the light layer. So we'll just fill this in, and then we'll add in the claw of the owl, and then we'll work on adding details to all of these in a second. And now on a new layer above the black lantern layer that we created, we're going to add the claw of the owl. So grab that dark red color, grab the circle brush, and we're going to trace and fill this shape in. You can, what I do here in a second is turn the opacity layer or the opacity down on the outline layer just so I can make sure that the shape is looking correct. And then I'll turn that layer off completely, fine tune the shape, change anything if I need to here. And then I'm going to grab that really dark brown color, the circle dark brush, bring that size down, and also again alpha lock, and I'm adding in some dark coloring here to the side of the claw, and then we'll blend it out. So you can grab that circle blend brush, grab that reddish color, and just blend this claw out a little bit. Now we can work on the black part of the lantern. So make sure again you alpha lock that layer. Grab the brown color. We'll start with brown. We'll add some lighter colors as well, but we're going to just add some lightness to where you would expect that light to hit. And so on the inside here of the handle, the light's going to glow up on it, up underneath of this part. So if you think of this as kind of going out a little bit further from the center, it's going to get hit with a little bit of light, and I'm just adding a little reflective on the upper areas, but a lot of the light's going to be below this line here, this entire section here that I'm filling in, and then the same thing on the bottom or anywhere that you would expect it to kind of glow and hit. We want to add more of this brown color to it, and then less as we go further away from that light source. And we're using that circle blend brush because then I can just blend this really easily. As you can see, I have a lot brighter brown towards the edge of where that light is. And as I go away, I'm doing lighter presses so it's not blending too much of that brown in. And then what we want to do is add some orange because this is kind of an orange glow. So same kind of technique, go over that brown that we just added. You don't have to go as far out as the brown, but just add a little bit of that orange glow here and there on the lantern. And now let's work on the actual glow here. So grab that yellow color and add some to the center of this orange here. You can blend it out here a little bit. I'm just adding quite a bit of yellow here. Again, make sure you have this layer set to alpha lock. I forgot to do that. So alpha lock that layer and just work on blending out yellow out towards that orange color on the edge. Now with that lantern done for now, I'm going to add a new layer below the owl here and work on the feet. So add a new layer, drag it below the owl, grab that dark red orange color, that circle brush, and we're going to just fill in the shape here of the owl's feet. You can do the shape if you want to, you could do it slightly different. I think I kind of tweaked it here a little bit from even the outline layer, but we're just going to fill in the general shape and then we'll add some detail. And I'm just keep fine tuning these feet. I wasn't liking how they were turning out, so I just added a little bit more fine tuning. Then set this layer to alpha lock, grab that really dark, almost black color, that circle blend brush, and we're just going to add some shadow here to the feet. Because again, anything to the left or underneath the feet is going to be in that shadow. The further right and more on top of the feet, it is going to be lighter. So we're going to grab that brownish color, bring a little bit more of that lightness, and I went a little too dark with it, and then grab that even lighter brown color, and we're going to add that just a little bit on the edge here to really highlight that there is that glow here. And now we're going to create two new layers. The first layer we're going to do is the ground layer. So grab that square brush, grab this really light kind of bluish teal color, and fill in that first layer on the ground here. Then with the second layer, bring that below that ground layer, and we're going to work on the background. With the background, we want it to be dark around the edges and then soft around where the owl is with its lantern. And so add the light color. You don't have to be perfect with this. We will blend this out, but add some of these colors here. We're going to do lighter again towards the center where that lantern is, darker towards the edges, and we'll work on blending this out. So again, don't feel like you need to be too perfect. We can do a Gaussian blur if we want to on this. I had it a little too choppy here, so I wanted to blend it out a little bit more. So that's why I'm grabbing that square blend brush to blend it out, and then I'll do that Gaussian blur on it again. And if you want it choppy, you definitely could do it more choppy. I just wanted it to be a little bit more seamlessly blended. So that's why I'm kind of going, you know, a little bit more blended before I do that Gaussian blur. Now with it a little bit more blended, I think that Gaussian blur will look really nice, but I still want to add a little bit more color definition here. So I'm adding some more of that lighter teal here to the center just to bring it out a little bit more. I'll try to darken up the edges a smidgen and then try the Gaussian blur on it again. And I'm also kind of picking up colors that are kind of blending in those in between colors just to blend it out even further before I do that Gaussian blur on it. And like I mentioned, I'm just bringing a little bit more darkness around the edges. I want to darken it. I want that owl to really pop here. And so that's why I'm kind of darkening those edges a little bit more to bring that light a little bit closer in. And I actually like how I've been blending this out. So I'm not going to do a Gaussian blur on this, but you're definitely welcome to do a Gaussian blur if you want to blend it out a little bit further. I just was starting to blend this out and I kind of liked the look that it is kind of doing for me. And so I'm not going to do a Gaussian blur on this. I'll move on to the ground here. But if you want to do a Gaussian blur, you can do that if you want. Now with that ground layer, make sure you set it to alpha lock, and we're going to add some detail here. I am going to use one of these other brushes in my set. I'll use that in a second, but right now we're still using that square blend brush. I'm adding in some lighter colors, so building up with these browns, these yellows, just where I think that light should hit, and then we'll add some texture with a texture brush here in a second. And I am kind of blending it a little bit, but not too much. Again, we'll kind of work on blending it as we go along. We're just kind of building out where we want the color to go. So where do we want those highlights? Where do we want those shadows? Do we want, those mid-tone colors, just to get that general sense? And then we'll keep building up, blending it out, adding some texture, and getting it to look how we want. And now I will kind of blend it out a little bit between these colors. So I'm just grabbing these in between colors, blending it out a little bit. We're still going to add texture to this, but we want a really solid base foundation here. So I'm blending these colors out to make them look a little bit more seamless. We do want to make sure that we pull in some more shadow underneath the owl, so I'll work on doing that here as well. But we want to just, again, have a really good foundation with this coloring, and then we can add texture to the surface of it. With the texture, it's a texture square brush that's in that set of brushes that I have on my Gumroad link, but we're just going to add a little bit of texture. So I'm adding in some of this lighter brown color. We'll pull in some darker color as well, some of those in between colors. It just gives a really fun texture on the ground that I like to use from time to time. So that's what we're going to use for this ground part. And again, we're just going to keep working on building these layers up, grabbing the brighter colors, the shadow colors, pushing the shadows darker, pushing the highlights brighter, just until it is starting to look how we want for this ground layer. I don't want it to go too dark in areas or too light in other areas. So that's why take your time, really build up this space. Now I'm adding plants as well to this kind of background. I'm using that circle brush and I'm just picking this lighter yellow color for now. We will add some variation to it. We'll alpha lock this layer, add some variation to it, but for now just add in the general shapes. And then I am grabbing colors from the ground here. I'm going to darken this a little bit, but I'll grab colors from the ground here to blend in with the greenery that I just added, because I want it to look seamless. I don't want it to look like it's just a light yellow on top of the background here. So when I work on the plants, I'll grab whatever color is on that ground color and add that. So make sure, again, it's set to alpha lock, but I'll add that coloring with a circle blend brush. I'm not going to use a texture brush on this, but I'll add that coloring to the base of the plant, so it looks like it's kind of coming up from the ground at that section. And I will darken these as well, especially the ones to the left as they're going further away from the lantern. We don't need them quite as bright because they're not closer to that. So grab that brown color, and we're using that circle blend brush. You could just add in a little bit of the darker color on the left side here and then darken them as we go further left. I'm going to also grab well, I'm grabbing that brown again, but I'll grab some of the other colors just to kind of blend it out a little bit and again make it a little bit darker. You can add a little bit to the right side as well. I did a little bit orange just to give it a little bit different coloring, but you could do orange, and as it goes further to the right it would be a little bit darker orange. So play with the color again, noting where that light is. On the right side of those plants, on the left is going to be brighter, on the right it's going to be darker, but with the left side plants are going to be darker on the left side and brighter on the right. So mess around with the coloring. If you want to go darker with them, you definitely can. I didn't go too dark with them, especially the ones on the right because they're right there by that lantern, but the left side I went a little bit darker, but not too dark still. And then I want to make it blend a little bit more with those plants so they look very stark against the ground. So I'm grabbing a little bit of that darker brown just to blend them in and make them look like they are coming out of this ground and not just looking like these random plants on top of the ground. And now I do want to darken the shadow underneath the owl. I think it's very light compared to what I want. So grab that dark blue color. We're still using that textured square brush, and I'm just going to add a little bit more shadow underneath the owl here. And then I'm also just going to darken up the bottom here. I'm just thinking of this as kind of a curved surface, so it's curving away from that lantern. It's going to be darker away towards the bottom of the screen here. You can also add some other colors here. I'm going to add a little bit more blue because it is looking a little too yellow for me. So I want to brighten it up a little bit with some of this blue here as well. And then what we're going to do is add a new layer above everything else. Grab this really light yellow, that soft brush, which is a Procreate standard, and add a little bit of a glow where that lantern's going to be. You can erase a little bit around the owl here, kind of in areas like above the hand, around the face a little bit where it's going to be more in the shadow to make it look a little bit more realistic. But I wanted to add a little bit more glow so that it really brightened and livened the scene. And I'm also erasing a little bit on the lantern itself because again, there's going to be some areas that are in the shadow area of the lantern. So I'm just trying to make it look a little bit more realistic. Not everything's going to be glowing from this lantern. So I'm just adding some areas here and there that would be in the shadow. And again, we're just kind of thinking of areas where there would be shadow. So, on the beak, it's not going to be fully bright. So I'm just erasing some of those areas just to bring it down a little bit. It's very bright. It doesn't need to be as bright as it was. And so I'm just kind of darkening some of those areas just by erasing. And then we'll do a Gaussian blur on this. And now we want to change the blend mode. So go to that layer, click N, which is N for normal, and select which one you want. I did the screen here first. I didn't necessarily like that, so I'm just kind of playing around with the different options here. There's overlay, there's soft light, hard light, so there's a lot of different options you can use. I end up using hard light for this. And then I just zoomed in to see where I might need to tweak some of this section. So as you can see, as I'm closer towards the hand of the owl, I kind of erased a little too much there. And so I'm just trying to fix it. I actually end up just moving the shape down a little bit. That fixed it for me pretty easily. And it still looks pretty good there. And then we're going to add some glowy dots here. I don't have a name for this particular brush, but it's the one that has all the dots in it. And I'm using that same yellow color, changing the sizes of it a little bit. So I use some shorter or smaller size. I use some larger size. I'm just adding speckles to this image just to give it a little bit more glowiness. That kind of went a lot with it. I really like the glowiness, and then I added a Gaussian blur because I want it to be soft. I really want this owl to stand out. I didn't go too hard with the Gaussian blur. I did add a few more speckles because I want some to be blurred like they're further away, some of them to be closer and more in focus. So I added a few more here and there, but I really had fun adding in this section. And now with that done, our owl is complete. I really hope you had fun with this one like I did today. If you enjoyed this, please be sure to like and subscribe to my channel. Also leave a comment below if there is something specific you want me to draw in the next video. Otherwise, I will see everybody in the next video, and happy drawing!